What's up, YouTube? I want to make a little kind of impromptu video. I see a lot of guys here lately wanting to get into long range shooting, and one of the important things really before you really get out there and start doing your load development and everything like that, when you do get your equipment, is a box drill. And I don't know if you may have heard the term before, you may not have. If you didn't, hopefully I can bring something new to you. But basically what a box drill is, it's testing the trueness of your turrets. And basically what that means is if you got, say, MOA turrets. I personally shoot MOA on my long range stuff, my hunting stuff. It's easier for me to do the calculations in my head because I'm so used to yardage, foot, basically the English measuring system instead of mils. Mils works basically the same way, it's just a different set of measurements you use. So I'll cover MOAs here kind of real quick on a box drill, and I'll just kind of touch on how you'd set it up differently for mils. But basically a box drill, there's two different ways of setting your target up. Forgive me, this is just an old ratty target I had that I couldn't find a good straight one. But anyways, there's two ways of setting your target up. You could either just put one dot down and shoot off that, as long as you write down what you're dialing on, or you can do a pre-measured system. So we're going to just guess. I just kind of set this up, try to set them up straight, but I couldn't find my tape measure to do a actual thing. We'll say this is 5 inches just for sake of argument. So if I set this up and I go exactly from center, 5 inches per dot, right? So I go 5 inches over, 5 inches, 5 inches, 5. All of these are equally 5 inches, let's just say for sake of argument. So I go set this up at 100 yards. This is my point of aim. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put 2 rounds and I'm going to verify 0. And I should have 2 rounds basically in this dot, or right around. Or if I got one a little high, one a little low, the center of my group should be the center of this dot. So you have to take shooter error, what your rifle's capable of, all that kind of into effect. So if your rifle's capable of shooting one MOA, which means a 1 inch dot, say a 3-shot group, this is about a 1 inch dot. So you should be able to keep 3 rounds in there if your equipment's physically capable of doing that. So what you do is you shoot 2 rounds here to verify 0. Now you verified it, you're on 0. If you don't, you got to make the correction so you're on that target, on that dot. So whether it takes 2 rounds, 5 rounds, it's not really a big issue as long as you end up on 0. Now, once you get your 0, what you need to do then, if you had to move your turret at all to get your 0, you have to re-zero that turret. And what that means, there's different ways of doing it, different scopes. Some just lift up, turn back to 0 without actually turning the mechanism inside. Some have set screws you loosen, so you can move your cap. But that cap has to read 0. And I'll show you real quick on a scope what I'm talking about. Basically, when you're done shooting your 0, it's out of the way so you can see. You want that turret back to 0 because that's your 100-yard 0, and that has to be set before you start making any dials to go anywhere, because you got to know where to go back to. So take the time, get your 100-yard 0, reset your turret. If your turret's unresettable, it's not really a scope you can shoot long range with because you'll get lost in your dial. And I'll tell you, kind of explain that here in a minute. But everything has to be 0 when your 100 yards is done and you're starting your box drill. So that's rule number 1: get your 0 and get your turret 0. So once you've established that and you've got everything going, you're shooting a good 0, your turret 0, and you're shooting MOA. What you now do is an adjustment. If we measured this out and this was perfectly 5 inches, what we do is we'd go 5 MOA to the left because we're shooting 100 yards, and that should be 5 inches. If you dial to a 5, because every click is a 1/4 inch on an MOA scope if it's a 1/4 MOA adjustment. So you're gonna dial in to 5 inches. So you're gonna go 20 clicks, or to your number 5, basically your big 5 on your turret, and you're gonna take a shot. And you can shoot 1, you can shoot 2, whatever makes you feel comfortable. If you shoot a bad shot, shoot another shot. If you felt you pulled that one or whatever, shoot another one. There's nothing to say you can't have multiple hits on one thing if you fired a bad shot, because we're not making it look pretty where we gotta have 1, 1, 1, 1, all perfectly. Fire another shot till you can basically feel comfortable with that shot. So now that we came over, our turret's basically our windage turret is gonna be 5 left, right? Because we put 5 MOA in it. Now we're going to go up 5 MOA. So we're going to turn our up and down turret, our top turret, to 5. We're going to take another shot, and we're going to continuously aim here. Don't ever change your point of aim. This is always going to be where you're going to aim for this whole test, is this red dot. And basically what you're doing is you're following your bullet impact as your scope makes adjustments. So you're going to go 5 left, 5 up. You're going to take that shot, see where that lands. That should be somewhere pretty close, you know. And if you fired a bad shot, fire another round. Then go 5 more up. So now you should be on number 10. Now you're going to start tracking back to the right. So you're going to go back to your elevation knob. You're going to turn it back to 0, right? Because we're going to take that 5 out of it. Fire 0. Now you should be right here. And you're still 10 up on your elevation, but you're 0 on your windage. Now you're going to go 5 to the right. So you're 10 here, 5, fire that round. Now you're going to go back to 5 on your elevation because you're wanting it to come down. So now you should be 5 and 5 when you fire this shot. Now you're going to take the 5 out of that, and you're going to be on your elevation. You're going to be back to 0, and you're going to be 5 to the right. You're going to fire that shot. Now you're going to re-zero that side turret, so you should be 0 and 0, right? Because you've tracked all the way around, and then you should fire a shot here, 1 or 2 shots, and you should be back in this dot. The whole time aiming at this dot. For every shot fired, you never changed your point of aim. You're always aiming here. So now that's what you do to test the tracking. So now if you fire your last shot and you're here, or you're here, you know, somewhere, that scope didn't track correctly. So that's something you got to look into, because if it won't track correctly, you can't make the adjustments when you're firing out at long ranges, because you don't know what your scope's actually, what input it's actually taking. So if you want to go 10 MOA up and shoot this dot, and it only shoots here, well, obviously your scope didn't take 10 MOA in the turrets. It only took, you know, whatever it is down 3 or 4 inches, so it only took like 7. That's a bad scope as far as shooting long range with. It may hold 0 and you know, be good used for like hunting or something like that you don't go out past your 100, or if you zero at 200 or something like that. But it's not a good scope to be able to track around, because if it won't track these dots and won't end up back at 0, you don't know what input that scope's giving you when you make adjustments, and you can't trust it on that purpose to shoot long range with. So it's always a good test to fire before you start shooting long range, because what's going to happen, if that scope's not putting in the inputs you want it to, you don't know if you're pulling, you know, jerking the trigger. You don't know if that gun just don't like that round. You know, it's a bad combination for that gun, bad bullet weight, whatever, and you're going to be constantly chasing your tail because your scope's basically setting you up for failure. So that's kind of why you know, high-end optics sometimes are high-end. You're usually paying for the glass, and you're paying for the kind of the trueness of the tracking. And you don't have to get crazy. It don't have to be a Nightforce. It don't have to be a US Optics, something like that. I have a Nikon Bushmaster, or Buckmaster, I'm sorry, the first series on my 223, and that thing tracks exactly right. I mean, I can just about punch one in each one of these if it's measured out, you know, 5 inches. I could just about punch one at 5 inches, 10 inches. I mean, it's money. They don't make that scope anymore, but you can still find them on eBay. They're, you know, $200, something like that. They still command a little bit of a premium because they are a good scope for the money. But it just goes to show you don't have to spend $1,500, $2,000 on a scope, you know, but you do have to test the equipment you have if this is what, you know, you eventually want to do is go out and shoot long range. It has to pass this test. You know, and if it's off by, you know, say a half an inch or something like that, it's doable. You know, you're just going to have to figure, you know, if you shot low or something you dialed way out, it could just be the scope giving you bad info. As long as it's not a huge amount, and as long as it comes back to here. Because if you ever go out long range shooting, a lot of times you don't confirm your 100-yard zero. You just put everything back to 0, put it in the case, and take it home. Well, if you come out the next time and it's not zeroed, that's because your scope didn't track. So you just don't want that that added flaw in there to really hamper what you think you're doing. You know, you think you're doing everything right, and you may be, but your scope's not letting you do it right because of the way it's not tracking. So how to explain MOA, sometimes it's pretty confusing. So if you look at this scale, this is just something like, so hopefully it shows up on camera there, but it's basically, this is like your line of sight. Your line of sight is straight, you know, you're 100, 200, 300, 400. Well, MOA goes up, and every 100 yards, it doubles by it adds what the original 100 yard was. So if you put an inch setting at 100 yards, you want to shoot an inch high, you click an inch, you know, inch over. Well, if you're at 200 yards and you put 1 inch, you know, dial into a 1, you're doing 2 inches. you dial a 1 at 300 yards, it's 3 inches. If you dial in a 1 at 400 yards, it's 4 inches. Because hopefully I can explain that correctly, but it's as it goes out. You know, your field of view is always straight. MOA is on a curve, and it's every 100 yards. It's going to change that input. It's going to add that to each time you go to another 100 yards. So 1 inch adjustment 100 yards is 1 at 100 because it's 1 MOA. 200, or MOA is always based on 100. So we put 2 inches in. We just basically put, you know, 1 or 4 clicks or whatever, 1, which is 1 inch. But it'll give you 2 at 200, 3 at 300, 4 at 400. It's a little confusing at first, especially when you first start getting into it. And for me, it was really confusing to do mills because I'm not a mill shooter. Like I said, I wasn't in the military, so I didn't. That didn't get harped into me as far as shooting mills. You know, shooting off meters instead of yards. I've always done it that way. So mills work the same way. It's just a different series of measurements. So a mill is, you figure if a MOA is 0.26 is basically what it works out to be, which everybody just rounds it to 0.25. But a true MOA is 0.26 for whatever reason. So we're going to say a quarter of an inch just for the ease of math, and you're only, was that 1/100ths difference. So you couldn't shoot that difference anyway, you know, unless you're a world-renowned Olympic shooter or something. But if you look at mills is basically works out to be 0.36 of an inch for every click. And a full mill is 3.6, and mills on a scope are usually always divided by 10, where MOAs are always divided by 4. So you have, you know, 4 clicks, you know, gives you 1 inch, where here, you know, you got to do 4 clicks is times 0.36. So there's a lot of added math for me that I have to do in my head when I'm trying to convert mills to MOAs, because this is what I know, and then I have to basically convert. I guess it'd be like learning Spanish, where you got to convert it in your head to English. You know what you're trying to say. To me, that's kind of what it is. I got to convert this over back to MOA. You know, basically put my input in. So I prefer to shoot MOA over mills, but not that one system's better than the other. It's just kind of what you're used to. And also on a mill turret, like I said, you're usually moving 1/10 of a mil, which is 0.36. You know, where these all say a quarter MOA, which is, you know, truly it's 0.26, but we're gonna, you know, everybody shoots it as 0.25. So that's what you'll see on your scope. And another really, really important thing is when you're selecting a scope, the turret's system matches the reticle. So if you got a reticle here, and this is your crosshairs, and basically if it's got the hash marks, if these are MOA, you know, these are telling you each one of these are, say, 2 MOA or 4 MOA, whatever the spacing may be, they vary in scopes, that you want MOA adjustment on your turrets. Because now you can actually measure with these and put your inputs right in the cap when you start getting more advanced into long range and stuff like that. And you can actually measure your shot, see how far you're off. If you hit here, you know, on this, if you have an MOA reticle, I can measure that with my reticle and tell you how far that is off. If I'm shooting 100 yards, I'm saying, okay, that's 2.5 inches off. You know, 2 MOA, 2.5 MOA. So I can put that right into my turret, and then the next shot's going to be right there, you know, dead center. Same thing with mills. If you got a mill system or whatever, it's going to be the same thing. Mills, but you want to make sure you have mill adjustments on your turrets. You want to make sure these two match. If these don't match, it's just a whole lot added math to do. For some reason, Leupold was big into mix matching. A lot of companies were. I see that here lately, probably last 4 or 5 years, most scope companies now get it and match the two. But for some reason, watch out buying some of the older, like surplus model scopes that were available for military through like Leupold. They're almost always mismatched. For whatever reason, they usually use an MOA adjustment and a mil dot turret. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you haven't bought your equipment yet. If you did, it's doable. It's not the end of the world. It's just you're gonna have to do a little more math than say I would when we're figuring the same shot. So to get that on there, like I said, if I was gonna do that box drill, it's kind of sometimes easier to show. If I was gonna do that box drill and I'm gonna take that first shot, and that first shot was gonna be left 5 MOA. So I'm gonna adjust the scope, 2, 3, 4, 5 MOA left. Bang, I'm gonna shoot it. I'm gonna hit that same plane that my zero was on, but I'm gonna be left 5 inches. Now if I wanna hit the one right above it, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna go up to 5. That's 5 inches. Take that shot, I should hit the one right next to it, still aiming at that red dot, that same point of Same point of aim never changes. You know, you never chase the dots around it. You same point of aim, and you let your scope track those dots all around. If I want to hit the next one was up 5 more inches, I'm going to go to 10. So I take that shot, bang, I should be up in that, I should be 5 inches left and 10 inches high. I'm going to take that next shot, which is 0, I'm going to spin this back. I'm going to take that shot, so I'm going to be back 0 here, 10 there. That should give me 10 inches straight up from my original 0. The same point of aim though, you know, at the bottom. I'm going to take that shot. Now I'm going to go over to the right. I'm going to take 5 MOA right, put that input in, bang, I should be in that upper right hand corner. Now I want to come down to 5, which would be the next one down. I'm going to take that shot, bang, I'm going to be right there. Now I'm going to lower that down back to my original plane, but this bottom right hand corner, take that shot. I'm going to should be 5 inches over from center on the same elevation as my 0. I'm going to take that shot, and then I'm going to wind this back down to 0. And that'll give me 0 and 0. Take that shot, I should be right back at that red dot, right where I initially started. And that's how you tell it, you know, how you track a scope. So it's always good to track, you know, and test out your equipment. Like I said, once you get everything done, you can kind of fill out your ballistic card or whatever you want to do. I use a Strelok program, and it's a pretty neat program. It's pretty spot on as long as you give it the right info. And I got mine marked out to 1,000 yards. I've only shot this gun, I think 850 was as far as we could get where we were. So 850 yards, I got to put in 30 MOA of adjustment, which is basically 120 clicks is what I got to put in this scope to shoot 850 yards. So, you know, there's a lot of adjustment that goes into it. This is 308, so it doesn't fly as well as like 6.5 Creedmoor, stuff like that, 260 Remington. Your 6 or 6.5 millimeters have a flatter trajectory than 308. I just personally like 308, but it is harder to shoot in the wind and at long distances. This is a Leupold scope. This is a VX3 I, one of the newer ones with the CDS turret. I don't have the CDS on it because the CDS limits you to 1 rotation. So that means if I zero at 100, 1 rotation will only give me, I think I figured 550 yards or so, and I'll be out of adjustment. Might even be 500 yards. I'll be out. So what I did is I went ahead and left this one with the standard dial, and it's the same thing. It's MOA. This one's just elevation. That's uncapped because I don't ever adjust for wind. I hold for wind because wind changes so much. And you'll learn when you shoot how you would rather do it, whether you'd rather hold for wind or whether you just dial wind. I personally hold for wind because it changes so much and so fast. By the time you could dial it, it may have changed. So with this one here, I can go out, you know, with my hunting setup. You know, I can range find something. I use the same data, same ammo I use for my long range gun. This gun shoots pretty well. So it's same barrel, same velocities come out of it. So I can use all that data into this gun and then basically adjust my scope from there. So I can feasibly take a shot on a deer, you know, and this has a Windplex scope in it, so I can adjust for wind in the reticle. But I'd be comfortable shooting about 500 yards on an animal. I can hit a 10-inch ringer at 500 yards 10 out of 10 times. It's not really that big of a deal when you get everything set up. You know, once the hard part is getting all your data, all your stuff in line, and then all it comes to you is getting a solid base and a good trigger squeeze. So I would be, you know, comfortable shooting 500. No wind, I might be able to stretch that out a little bit, but 500 with a little bit of wind, I wouldn't have any problems with it because I can dial. If I couldn't dial on this gun, then I probably would do a 200-yard zero, and I'd probably be comfortable about 250, 275. So with me being able to dial, that doubles my effective range, you know, my personal effective range on this gun, because I can do that. I've practiced that, and I can shoot out that far because I'm not guessing anything. I'm putting an input in, and I'm pulling the trigger, and all the basic math and everything's been done for me with the program, so I'm not doing anything special. I'm just holding the gun still and getting a good trigger squeeze off, and that's all I have to do because everything else has been done basically on a calculator for me. So that just wanted to cover that, guys, on you know, the adjustment, you know, setup and to box drill your stuff, because you don't know, even if I box drill this and it's great, you can buy the same scope, same model. You still need to box test it because it may, you know, you may have got a bad one. You know, it may not track exactly right. And you need to know that for your equipment and your peace of mind and just confidence. You know, with shooting long range, a lot of it is just building the confidence of your equipment and, you know, what you've basically done as far as your calculations go, your chronographing your rounds. You got a good velocity reading on them, so everything's, you know, done and in your calculator right. And you'll learn that with going out there. If something's off, it's going to tell you, because you start getting out 400 or 500 yards. It's going to tell you something's off, because you're going to be low or you're going to be high. You're going to be somewhere because something you inputted was wrong, whether it be, you know, speed, ballistic coefficient was wrong, whatever, you know. Gun might not like the round or whatever the factors are, but there's a ton that go into it, and you'll learn. And the only way to learn is going out there and squeezing the trigger, unfortunately. But it's fun, you know, like that. All that is a learning process, and all of it is a good time. So, anyways, guys, I just wanted to cover that in the box drill. Hopefully, you know, that made some sense with the how MOAs work, and like I said, mills work the same. It's just a different type of measurement, or different series of measurements. It's a little different MOA, but I think in feet and yards and inches, so it's easier for me. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, if you're new to it, I hope you learned something. Leave some comments down below if you got any other questions. That's just like I said, just basically covering the box drill part of it. I may do some videos later that cover more into long range and what it takes. But anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.